big telling for Mayock's offseason, like how him and Gruden can work together and what they bring in free agency. Because I know Mayock likes to build through the draft, but I don't know. There's just something with, I guess, the Raiders program, because how come every other rookie from different teams, whether it be offensive or defensive, they're kind of a little bit further along. And then our rookies just seem to look like rookies amongst, professional athletes. It's just from what I've seen. Like Henry Ruggs, perfect example. Like, yeah, he had a couple of games where they were good, but an argument can be made that that Judy had a better game. CeeDee Lamb had a better year. And it's just kind of you want to see your rookie wide receiver or any of your rookies kind of show out just like every other team is. And maybe it's the coaching staff or maybe it's the players themselves. But I think this offseason will be really telling for Mayock and Gruden, considering this is going to be their second offseason together. So I'm curious to see what happens and how they address all the defensive needs that we have. So,
yeah, and you know what? Just real quick, I know we're already running late, but I did want to say this, and I think I mentioned it to you on a Marco Polo a while back, but you had been saying you've been kind of notorious saying on the podcast that you think Jon Gruden's on the hot seat, like more than anyone else. Mm-hmm. And I would disagree with you. I mean, you were talking about the Henry Ruggs thing. I know a lot of people, especially the Derek Carr haters, are going to say, well, that's Derek Carr. That's why, No, it was because, first of all, Ruggs was never on the field. And secondly, he didn't really, because of the non-off season and him not being on the field that much, and then we already had some decent receivers as it was, he really didn't progress how we wanted him to. We saw, like you said, we saw a couple of games with him. It really wasn't Carr's fault. It's just Ruggs really wasn't on the field that much. And honestly, Gruden never really put Ruggs in the offense as much as he should. I mean, that was one of the big things. We were like, why isn't Ruggs playing? Why isn't Ruggs playing? And there was a couple of times where he was injured, but there was a couple of times it was just like he wasn't in the offensive scheme. So if you want to blame Carr, actually blame Gruden. My thing is this. I think Mike Mayock is on the chopping block. I think this has to be the year he hits, because what was his very first draft pick that he had as a Las Vegas Raider GM?
Clelin Ferrell.
Well, Clelin Ferrell. He was the 4th pick in that draft. The 4th pick. And what has he done? Ferrell got better this year. But would you say he's worth that 4th round or 4th pick? No. If he were 4th round, yes. He did what he needed to do, but he's not. He was a 1st round, 4th pick of that draft. There were so many more guys we could have gotten. And I like Ferrell. I think he's okay, but he doesn't do what a 4th pick does. Like that's so annoying. And then we had the opportunity to get a Jerry Jeudy, who you and I wanted the most. Justin Jefferson, who was really good, who we liked as well. You and I really liked T. Higgins. We were starting to grow on him. Mm-hmm. And we thought he was going in the 1st round, and he ended up going, first in the 2nd round. But still, I mean, we really were starting to like T. Higgins. And we go after Henry Ruggs. And yes, Ruggs is speedy and everything. But our argument was it was 1 year with Alabama where he really stunned everyone. Mm-hmm. And then also we've seen these receivers who have so much speed. I mean, God, Al Davis made a freaking career out of it. And when football changed, where it wasn't just about speed, like you had to have a running game, it wasn't good anymore. Like it didn't work anymore. My worry is this. The reason I don't like Tyreek Hill is the reason I'm really concerned about Henry Ruggs is, yes, he's super fast. There's no question. But is he that great of a receiver? And he's had a lot of drops. He's had fumbles. He's really skinny. He's not that strong. So the issue for me is he's going to have to develop as a receiver overall. And if he's not, it's going to be the same stigma as we've seen multiple times before of, yeah, he was super fast, but he couldn't do anything. I mean, Sammy Watkins was a top 10 pick, and he's good, but he's not great because he was fast, and a lot of people fell in love with that. So Mike Mayock, to me, should be on the hot seat because he really hasn't done what we thought he was going to do in the draft, which was draft really well. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, as you've mentioned to me, I feel a lot better about when Reggie McKenzie was the GM about his draft picks versus Mike Mayock's.
Yeah.
So we'll see. This draft has to hit, in my opinion. If it doesn't, I want Mayock out. Well, Mayock has done okay, but he's also pissed a lot of Raiders off. I mean, he pissed off Antonio Brown, and you know, I'm not a fan of Antonio Brown. I'm not saying Brown was in the right, but initially what happened was that relationship got split. And so then Antonio Brown started making those dominoes fall where he basically ended up wanting out. And then you talk about after this year, Mayock goes on some radio show and he says, well, our rookies sucked, basically. And Henry Ruggs posted it on Instagram. It's like, well, great. So not only was he our first pick of last year's draft, but now you've pissed him off. And who knows if he wants to play next year, you know? And you could say, well, that's on the football player, but it's also on the GM. Like, as a GM, you gotta like get these guys to want to play, not just throw them away. And I'm not really impressed with Mayock right now. I'm really not. Sorry, you were going to say something and I interrupted you.
Well, I was just going to say, we'll see how this offseason goes and how, actually with now a mini camp, a training camp, an actual offseason program, we'll see what it looks like, especially with the second, like the rookies now coming into their second year. I'm really curious to see how they progress, because we'll just say, like, look, first year for Mayock, basically during the draft, he scouted these guys. Him and Gruden agreed to select these guys. Let's just see how they develop. Now, I will say, if they have some really, like if the new crop of draft picks that we bring in, and also obviously the sophomores that we have coming back from their rookie years, basically stink up the joint, yeah, I think Mayock is out. And I still seriously think that we should look at Jon Gruden as potentially being out as well, just because I agree with your points, but also too, I can honestly say, like, look, it takes Jon Gruden, who's somewhat of an offensive guru, which is what he's been known for. You know, Henry Ruggs, who's a rookie, you have to get him involved in the game plan, which is what I always gripe about when we got rid of Amari Cooper. Like, yeah, Amari Cooper had injuries. Sometimes he was hit and miss. He had the drops. But honestly, like, when Jack Del Rio was on the team and it was him and Michael Crabtree, he was a 1,000-yard receiver. As soon as Jon Gruden came in, Jon Gruden just for some reason went to him like 1 week out of a 6-week stretch, and it was like, what are you doing? You know, he's still a good receiver. He's fast. He still gets open, and he's productive. And look what he did with the Dallas Cowboys with an outdated offense of Mike McCarthy. He flourished in that, and even with Andy Dalton, he still had a very, very good season. But why? It's because Jon Gruden doesn't make it a point to get his guys involved. Like, yes, he's in love with Darren Waller. He's really the only consistent player that gets the catches and the targets, but like, you got to get Ruggs involved. And for example, you need to get Cooper more involved. Like, to me, that's on the coach. It's not Derek Carr to give the ball more to him. Obviously, he has a game plan. There's a game script. There's plays that he's given, and they have a strategic way that they're supposed to attack said defense. But you're not using your best weapons. You're trying to get cute, and in my opinion, is going to do Jon Gruden in. And it's starting to remind me that Jon Gruden was innovative at his time, and now it feels like he's the guy that's trying to bring back old school football. And in some respects it works, but then there's a lot of these defenses that are way more creative, and you can tell it slows down the offense to where we need to go more into a spread, and we should probably look into going to RPOs more often, because then we can start getting Jacobs more involved. We can start getting elusive plays for Ruggs. Maybe we do need a quarterback more like Mariota or whatever, because he can probably run an offense like that better than, let's say, Derek Carr. Because Derek Carr is a typical drop back quarterback, but clearly the offense is outdated, and you can tell. So to me, this is landing more on Jon Gruden. I know now we're basically debating on who we'd keep over the other, but in my opinion, like, yeah, Mayock is great and all, and yeah, I agree. Like, we need to reevaluate how good he is if his draft picks and the players don't develop. But in the same breath, too, like, Jon Gruden is a $100 million man. This is on him to make it successful. You can't go 2 years in a row with being a playoff team, and then the last half of the season, your team is undisciplined and you fall off out of the playoff race and you're eliminated before the end of the season. That just doesn't work 2 years in a row, and you're supposed to have turned the franchise around, so to speak. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because like you said, if you're going to get player money to be a head coach, you better be winning a lot.
Yeah.
And you're not. And I know these people want to say, oh, it's Derek Carr. Oh, it's the defense. But I mean, in all reality, you're right. I mean, it's a mixture of Mike Mayock. He's not drafting the right players, but mainly Gruden's not coaching these guys up. I mean, why all of a sudden why were we 6-4 and we had beat the undefeated Chiefs, and then all of a sudden we're trailing off?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why does that happen? It's not the players, that's also coaching, because that's why they have the season as long as it is, because it's supposed to be a little bit grueling. It's supposed to get the weaker teams who can't finish how you're supposed to finish out of the way. And right now, you're exactly right. I mean, earlier this year, I would have been like, in the beginning of the year, I would have been like, wow, if they go 8-8, I understand the uproar, but they are still learning. But now, watching how it was, it's kind of hard to say, if Jon Gruden doesn't get it done this year, he might have to go. I mean, he might have to, because he's obviously not getting it done, and he doesn't deserve that $100 million contract.
Mm-hmm.